Hey there, we are now going to learn another variation in the Sicilian defense, which is called the accelerated dragon, which, as you can imagine, has some connections with the Sicilian dragon. So this line we get it after the moves e4, c5, knight to f3, and here we mainly focused on the moves d6 or even e6 by black, but here black can play other moves such as knight to c6. And after we play the move d4, black takes and we take. The move g6 leads to the accelerated dragon. And there are other ways to get to this position. For example, here instead of playing knight to c6, black can play the move g6. And after d4, black takes. There's even the possibility of taking with the queen that we're not going to focus on. But take with the knight is normally more principled. And now after knight to c6, we transpose into the same position on which we get the accelerated dragon. And black plans to fianchetto the bishop to g7 to put some pressure on this diagonal. And there's another detail, which is the fact that black didn't play the move d6. And in some lines, as we'll see, black might plan to even play the move d5 at once instead of playing d6 and d5. If black manages to play d5 under good conditions, black might equalize the game or even get an advantage. So although this line has a lot of similarities with the dragon, there are some differences and a lot of subtle move orders that we need to learn. So although this way of playing gives black some flexibility, it also gives white other options like playing the move c4. c4 is a very interesting move for white, but I want to focus on similar positions that we already learned. That's why here I suggest to play the move knight to c3, which is pretty much equally popular. So knight to c3 is a very sound move. And we're going to try to play the same system of playing bishop to e3, queen to d2, bishop to c4 and castle long, which, as we'll see, sometimes we will not be able to do it, but we can still get very good positions. So here black is going to continue with bishop to g7, in most cases because this is consistent with the previous move. Now we're going to play bishop to e3. This knight on d4 was being attacked. Black doesn't really threaten to exchange because after all the exchanges, it would just bring the queen to d4 and improve the queen. So taking on d4 is something that you should not be afraid of in this position. Black will normally develop the knight. And now here comes already quite an important point. Here it is important to play the move bishop to c4, which in a way is logical with this idea that we want to stop d5 pretty much at any cost, because if black plays d5, then black might get a very good position quickly. For example, here if we play the move f3, then black can castle, and queen to d2 would already not be very strong because after d5 we see that black manages to play d5 at once, and d5 normally is a very good move for black if it doesn't lose material because it counterattacks on the center. It also allows black to develop the pieces. That's why in this position black is already doing fine, black is already equal in this position. And if we play bishop to c4 now, after playing f3, here black has the extra option of playing queen to b6. Black has a lot of pressure on d4. Taking on e4 is an idea, putting pressure on the knight. Also taking here on b2. For example, after bishop to b3, knight takes e4. Black is already winning a pawn, because if we take on e4, then black will simply capture on d4. And in this position, it is actually up to white to prove that white has compensation, so this is something that I suggest that you avoid. That's why in this move, just remember this idea of developing the bishop to c4 before playing f3 or queen to d2 ideas. So now white made an important decision, so now it is up to black to make already an important decision. Castling is the most natural move, but black has other options that we're going to analyze later. Mainly the move queen to a5. So castling makes a lot of sense. And here now we can play bishop to b3. This is also another subtle move. In a way, we want to have the bishop on a safe square. The bishop is not hanging on b3. But again, black has an idea of taking on e4. For example, if we castle short, here black can take on e4. And after taking on d4, black can play d5. And black already has pretty much an equal position. That's why here we're going to play the move bishop to e3. And here black's most logical move is to play d6. d5 is not possible because white will simply take on d5. Now we have the bishop controlling d5. So d6 is the most logical move that we're going to analyze shortly. But I just want to mention another idea, which is the move a5, which some players that know a lot of theory might play it against you. First of all, I don't want to overload you, but at least I want you to know that this is a move in the position. In the file that I'm going to give you in the resources section, you're going to have all the moves. So if you want to go through them again, you can check that file. But this a5 idea is actually very aggressive, so we need to know how to play against it. Black has some ideas of playing a4 and then taking on e4. That's why here we're going to play the move f3. And now black normally follows up with the move d5. Otherwise the move a5 just weakens squares, so black normally follows up with the move d5, sacrificing a pawn. And unless you're just very well prepared against this line, there's a very solid way for white to play against it, which is to play bishop takes. And after black takes, we are going to take with the knight. There's the option to take with the pawn, but after knight to b4, the play gets really sharp because black is planning to get the pawn back and planning to play bishop to f5. Since this is not a very popular line, I suggest that you play solid and get a good position by taking with the knight. And now white has an extra pawn, that's why black has to do something concrete. Normally black plays the move f5, trying to put pressure. And here there's a very easy way to simplify the position, which is to take on c6. And after black takes, we play knight to b6. We attack the rook and we're going to force the exchange of queens. And after black plays rook to b8, sooner or later black will have to move the rook. Then we just exchange pieces. And although we give the pawn back, then we might get this position. For example, after taking e4, we take the bishop. And after rook takes, b3, pawn takes, we get this position on which objectively the position is equal. But white has a slightly better pawn structure. These two pawns can become targets, this pawn as well. White's king is closer to the center, which normally in endings it is great to have a centralized king. So white has the potential to claim an advantage, although the position is fairly equal. So in any case, just remember that after a5, you can play f3 and get a solid position. In any case, black will normally play the move d6. And here we're going to play f3 because now knight to g4 might be a bit annoying. f3. And after bishop to d7, black normally will develop here. Queen to d2. And we get into a position in which if black goes for rook to c8, we can castle long and we will just transpose into our dragon variation. So we have already seen those positions a lot. But black has an extra option of taking on d4, which we saw in the dragon variation, but in that line black had the rook on c8. So here we have some subtle differences. Now black can follow up with b5. So the idea is that if now we castle long, then this rook on a8 might be even better placed, or at least black didn't waste time, so black can start pushing the pawns on the queen side quickly. That's why in this position white normally goes for h4 or for the move a4, which I suggest that you play. And here after b4, which is normally played, taking on a4 might be a possibility, but here we can simply take, and we might have some pressure on this pawn. And we might even consider castling short in this position. So far white has this flexibility to castle because white's king is not under attack yet. So we're going to decide where to castle based on how black plays on the queen side. In any case, here black normally plays b4, and now we're gonna play knight to d5. We saw a similar idea in the dragon, and after knight takes, we take on g7, king takes, the bishop was attacking the rook, and we're gonna take with the pawn. We also saw this idea to have some pressure against this pawn on e7. And after a5, I share a model game on which white again played the move h4. White doesn't want to hurry to castle long, because if white castles long, then queen to e8 would put pressure on this pawn. That's why here white played the move h4. White still doesn't need to decide where to castle, planning to go h5. And in the game, white got a slight advantage. Although the game was a draw, white got a slight advantage. The game continued e5, and here white took on e6, because now we get this potential weak pawn on d6. And now here white castled. So this is another instructive moment, because after black took on b3 and white took, we have this structure which is actually quite good for white to have a safe king, because the king is going to come to a2 and black doesn't have any more pawn breaks, so white's king is going to be very safe there. And now it is going to be up to black to repel white's attack. White had a slight advantage in the game, even though the game ended in a draw. So let's go back to this position. Remember that we want to play the move bishop to c4, already anticipating black's idea of playing d5. So we've already analyzed the move castling short, which leads to very similar positions that we saw in the dragon variation. And here black has other alternatives. Just want to mention that the move knight to g4 is an idea that you should not be particularly afraid of. This seems to hang the knight, which we're going to take it, but here black will get the piece back. But here white can simply continue with queen to d1, because this queen is a bit exposed there. d5 might be an idea by black. That's why we can play queen to d1, or we can also castle long instead of moving the queen. In any case, we see that white has a very comfortable position here. White has better development, so this is not something that you should be afraid of. Another rare move is the move d6, because black wants to keep this idea of playing d5, so playing d6 quickly would not make a lot of sense. But it is actually interesting if white plays f3, because here, if we play f3, then black has this idea of playing queen to b6. We saw a similar position with black's king on g8 after black castled, but these positions might also be a bit tricky. So that leaves us with another logical way of stopping knight to g4, which in this position is a bit annoying because the knight on g4 now is protected by the bishop on c8. But here we can play h3 with the idea to castle short, and this might normally even transpose to the line that we're going to see now, which is the line on which black plays queen to a5. So now castling is the main option. d6 is rare, knight to g4 is rare, but queen to a5 is another move that you should be aware of. And here you just need to remember that you're going to castle short. So this is an accelerated dragon on which we castle short. Remember, in the other line we're going to aim to castle long, but here, for tactical reasons, you're going to castle short. The point is that f3, for example, queen to b4 is actually a bit annoying, because now black is attacking c4 and b2, and if the bishop moves, for example, black has this idea of taking on e4. And again we have this pressure on d4. And if white tries to play an intermediate move, then black can also play an intermediate move, bishop takes, and we give a check. This is quite important. So black is doing fine here. So just remember that against queen to a5 you're going to castle short, because if you play queen to d2, there's also another idea of taking on e4, and after taking, black trades queens and then takes on d4, and black is a pawn up. So queen to a5 has several ideas. Now this pawn on e4 is pinned, because the queen on a5 is pinning the knight on c3. That's why here we're going to castle short, and we're gonna get a very solid position, as we'll see. And here black would normally castle short, Now black cannot go for this trick of playing queen to b4, because after bishop to b3, knight takes. So if black wants to try the same idea, here we're gonna take on c6, and now black doesn't have bishop takes because this would not give a check, and then I would take on b4, then I would take the queen, and if black tries to take here, then we're gonna play the move a3, and now black is losing material because if the queen moves, then we're gonna take the knight on e4, and black might try some tricks which don't work. After knight takes, we attack the queen, but here we're gonna play this very nice move, queen to f3, and basically pretty much all of black pieces are under attack. We plan to take on f7 with the queen, we can take here, we can take here. That's why black is losing a lot of material here. Even after knight to e2, giving a check, we don't take the knight, we play king to h1, and now the queen is attacked, and then we're gonna take on f7, we're gonna attack black's king, and we're also gonna take on g7. That's why white has a winning advantage already. So after queen to a5, we castle, black normally will castle, and now we play bishop to b3, the bishop is safer on b3, black will normally continue with d6, now d5 is not possible, and here we're gonna play h3. f3 is another idea, but the idea of playing h3 that I suggest that you play also against an early d6 is to keep the extra option of playing f4. So now we're gonna try to play on the center. And the model game that I showed continued bishop to d7, which was played in most games. And now white has an alternative. One is to play f4 directly, which is interesting. Or white can also play rook to e1, with the idea to play a bit more slowly by playing queen to e2 and rook a to d1. So in the model game, black played rook f to e8, and after queen to e2, rook a to c8, rook a to d1. White got a slight advantage. White has more space on the center, managed to put some pressure on black, winning the game. Okay, so we have studied the accelerated dragon, which is an interesting alternative for black, particularly if you're not prepared. But now you are prepared, so you know how to play against it and get a slight advantage. So just play knight to c3, and after bishop to g7, bishop to e3, knight to f6. Here remember to play the move bishop to c4, which is logical to fight against d5 ideas by black. And here there are two main moves. Just remember that if black castles, then you're gonna play bishop to b3, and we're normally gonna get very similar positions to the dragon variation. And if black plays the move queen to a5, then you're gonna castle short and try to fight for a slight positional advantage.